that's what April. Yeah, it's been a while. I was just thinking, I was on the original team with starting NOWS. And I used to walk around putting the flyers on everyone's doors about when the meetings were. And how many years ago was that now?
Hi, all. Looks like we got a full house here. Let's get rolling with the meeting. We got a full schedule.
Yay.
My name is Jason Hunter. Other board members and steering committee meetings. Members on the call are Audrey Alfong and April Glatzel. Just some real quick housekeeping, I guess, is when we get a lot of folks on the calls like this, we ask that we try not to be too formal. So we ask that you put your hand up in the reactions button at the bottom of your screen in Zoom. There should be a hand waving function, like clapping, where it says raise hand, one of the two. If you do that, I'll try to call on you. Or you can type your questions into the chat and I'll try to read those questions out. And I'll call on you in the order that I see them. And please put your microphones on mute if you're not speaking at the time, because there can be a lot of static in the background and crosstalk, and we want to have an effective and efficient meeting. Also, just so everybody knows, we tape these meetings, so everything you say can and will be used against you. So just keep that in mind. They're going up on posterity, and we post them. I believe they go on our Facebook site, but I'm almost positive they also go on our website. April, if you don't mind, can you put our Facebook site link and our website link in the chat function so people can find that later? I think we also have an Instagram account as well. Shows you what I know. Shows you how technologically sophisticated I have one. I'm pretty darn sure. I'm sure Suzanne puts a lot of work into doing that. I don't think I've ever been on Instagram. Maybe one day. So anyway, so at the beginning of the meeting, I always like to welcome everybody. We know that this is time away from your family here, 6:30 in the evening. We're going to try to make the best use of everyone's time. We've got a really exciting schedule for this evening, kind of a murderer's row, if you will, of folks from the city and to talk about various things. So I'm just going to do a little bit of house cleaning. We're going to get right into the speakers. I always like to read the mission at the beginning of the meeting of the Neighbors of the Wood Street, so people are reminded about what this organization kind of stands for. The mission of the Neighbors of the Wood Streets is to reach out to each other collaboratively in order to achieve positive changes in our community. We have joined together to ensure that our neighborhood continues to be a safe, thriving, attractive, and united community for all who live, work, and play here. Our vision for the future is to maintain, support, and preserve its unique character and diverse historic nature. We value an inclusive community regardless of race, age, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, physical disability, homeowner, renter status, or length of residency. So with that, the first thing I want to get through is events that are coming forward, and I know April has one to announce. April, National Night Out.
Hi, everyone. Did you want me to talk about NNO now?
Yes, please.
Okay, everyone, we are looking forward to resuming our National Night Out tradition this year. It will be Tuesday, August 3rd from 6 to 8:30 p.m. on Brentwood Avenue between Brockton and Palm. National Night Out is an annual community building campaign that promotes police community partnerships and neighborhood camaraderie. We're still in the preparation stages. However, we anticipate hot dogs, veggie dogs, possibly Brooks Bar, which will provide refreshments and beer. We'll also have watermelon, snow cones, and snacks, as well as MC Patrick Maloney, who is host of the Riverside Open Mic Music Series and also co-host of HeyRiverside.com. We'll also have raffle prizes, games, painting, face painting, and a craft table for the kids. We're also hoping for visits from the Riverside Police Department and the Riverside Fire Department. The only thing we're in need of are a few extra pop-ups to shade us from the sun. So if anybody has any extra pop-ups or two to loan us for the day, we'd be very appreciative. Thank you for your time.
And if we could get a sponsor, we could use one more sponsor, quite frankly, because the way we like to run that is that when people show up, and I don't think there's really, it's August 3rd, that's correct. I don't think there's any question that Neighbors of the Wood Streets Community Group, we have the best national night out in all of Riverside. I think it's not just all of Riverside. I don't think that's bragging. I think we could possibly have the best national night out in all of the United States of America. So please come on by, tell your neighbors, spread the word. You know, it's always a good time, and we're gonna see a lot of people there. So, and if anybody knows a possible sponsor in the neighborhood, please reach out to somebody on the board. We could use one more sponsor. So next up is our treasurer. Audrey, could you give a real quick report on our treasury?
Yes, so I'm Audrey, treasurer, and what we do is I want to remind people we don't confuse. So the way we get money to either recycle cans and bottles, or when we do yard sale, that's how we get money. And the money is either to fund national event, or if we have extra money, then also give out to different organizations. So I would put my phone number in the chat. So if you have recycled cans and bottles, give me a call and we can make arrangement for you to drop that at my place. And so clear, thanks to have donated cans and bottles, I've raised $52. So currently we only have $10, and we hope to make more money to help, our national night out event.
Yes, we usually, our major fundraisers is the Wood Streets yard sale, and we kind of have it. We haven't had that now for 2 years, so that's kind of hurt our ability to raise money. So once again, if we could get a sponsor, that'd be great. One more announcement, I guess, that I have is our next meeting date will be September 9th, 2021. And we're hoping to return to the RCC Alumni House at that point in time. But we're going to try to continue having a virtual component to the meetings, kind of like a hybrid meeting. So if you want to come in person or you want to attend from your home, that's fine with us. We're about getting participation. So next thing real quick is we've got and it's got to be under about 7 or 8 minutes here. We've got RPD represented by Sergeant Chris Williams. A real quick report on the neighborhood.
Yes, sir. Hello, everybody. So I'm Sergeant Chris Williams. I'm your new sergeant for the North Neighborhood Policing Center. Most of you probably knew Sergeant Goodson, who is now Lieutenant Goodson. But I'll just get right into some data that I have for you guys and some updates of some changes that have recently happened specifically to the downtown area. First, I'll give you the some PSET. You guys have probably heard a lot about that in the news and press releases lately. Our PSET stats for the year. PSET has visited 2,931 locations year to date. They have made over 3,000 contacts of homeless individuals offering services. Of those 3,000 contacts, 294 have accepted services. Code notices have been issued to 776 right-of-ways within the city, public right-of-ways. And there have been 213 citations issued and 316 arrests have been made. And 29 vehicles have been towed, but here is the most impressive statistic about our PSET team. 270 tons of rubbish have been cleaned up from homeless encampments. So you all can imagine what this city would look like if we didn't have our PSET team in place. A few other things that have come up recently. As of June 15th, the county jail has resumed normal operation. So I know one of the biggest issues in our city is homeless and people out, in and out of jail and people walking around the streets. We should see an improvement with that because now that the county jail is back to normal operations, the people that we as the police are arresting, which we have been doing the entire time through COVID and everything, they are now going to be held. They're now going to receive services in the county system, whether that be mental health, they're not going to be cite and released anymore out of the jail. Now, I'm not saying nobody's going to be cite and released, but it's going to be a lot less than what has been over the last year because of the special COVID rules. And I'll answer questions let me just get a few more things out and then anybody has any questions. Mag and Elizabeth, which I know is very close to where you guys mostly live. We've recognized a problem there. We've dedicated a lot of resources there over the last few weeks. We've seen an improvement. Some of the people who I've specifically talked to seem to be relaying there's also an improvement. obviously still work to be done, but just so you know, that area is on our radar and we are deploying all of our resources into that area, trying to clean it up. Specifically downtown area, downtown saturation. My whole team has been working downtown this week, trying to clean up the Main Street Mall around City Hall, all that stuff going on. There's a lot of changes going on in the city, and we're trying to continue to do what we do as police, and then now we're bringing in more resources, especially with the county going back to normal operation. And you guys might be interested in this too. The river bottom has been a big project for ours. Just recently, we did an audit of the whole river bottom, looking for access, how vehicles are getting out in there, looking for holes in the defenses that we have for blocking vehicles from getting out there. We just had a meeting this afternoon with RPU, Parks and Rec, County Park Rangers, County Flood Control, and we're looking to fortify all the entrances that go down to the river bottom to not allow vehicles to go in there, obviously for the safety of the pedestrians and the bike riders. Just so you guys know, we're getting a lot of buy-in. Lieutenant Goodson was in that meeting, and he said that's the best meeting since he's been doing this, and that's been about 3 to 4 years since he's been doing it, and everybody's kind of taking a piece of it, and it looks like we're making some progress on that finally. And National Night Out, we will be there. We will be out there on National Night Out. I'll commit to that right now.
Oh, perfect. All right, we got time for like one question. If there's somebody with maybe one question for Karen, go ahead. You're on mute. You got to take yourself off mute.
Well, the question I have is related to the homeless and the river bottom. And some of my people might have seen that I posted on Nextdoor that I had an antique wicker baby carriage stolen off my porch 1 week ago. That's been on my porch for 21 years. And unfortunately, I didn't see it until that Tuesday night. And I guess a lot of people saw it in the Ralph's shopping center Tuesday during the day. And then I did make I did call the police, made a report. I don't know if an actual report was made, because he noted it down and he said, well, watch out for him. I actually went to myself to Ralph's, the smoke shop, the antique stores and everything. And I also, somebody had posted, they saw him at the bus bench 6:30 in the morning on Wednesday, but I didn't see the post till 7:30. And I drove all around there and I didn't see him. But then a lady did notice at the smoke shop, she had seen him during the day with the antique, it's a full-size baby carriage, all wicker, strapped to the top of a cart, heading on Palm and Rubidoux, heading towards the river bottom. So my understanding was that once it goes to the river bottom, they don't retrieve it. They won't go looking for it. So you were talking about the cleanup and everything. When they do this cleanup and stuff, if there's items that have been reported stolen, do they then return those items to the people? Or, and like I said, I've been to the antique stores even asking them, if you find something, or if somebody comes to try and sell you this baby carriage, would you call me? Ralph's even had a video, but I couldn't access it, where he had actually wheeled the baby carriage into the store and did shopping and left it by the manager's desk.
All right, Sgt Williams, can you address that?
Yeah, so a lot of times when it comes to stolen property, if there's some identifying, this sounds very unique, so we probably don't see a lot of wicker baby carriages out there. I will personally call my PSET team who works down the river bottom, and I think they plan on going down there this week, and I'll have them keep an eye out for it. But unless there's something that's specifically some kind of identifying mark where, like say if an officer on patrol comes across it, most likely it's going to be collected, and trying to find that. Maybe I would check in a couple of weeks to see if we have anything like that in evidence. We can do something like that, but the best chances are probably to get individual officers to keep an eye out for you, and I'll pass it along to them, see if we can get that back to you.
Can you put your contact information in the chat below? So if people want to follow up, they can do it after the meeting, because we got a full schedule today.
Yep.
Charles, I got you. Got it quick though.
Yes, Sergeant, your predecessors had started a process of trying to figure out what they were going to do with the high-speed traffic on Magnolia between, say, Harupa and Ramona. They had put forth some ideas. They had actually done some traffic counts and stuff like that. I'm kind of wondering where we are with that because the traffic keeps getting faster and faster.
Okay, I am aware of what you're talking about. That happened right as I was coming in. I do know our traffic unit did do a speed survey out there, and they have done some special projects doing ticketing out there. I don't know what the future plans are, but I'll put my contact information if you want to send me an email or something I can get back to you. I'll check with the traffic lieutenant and figure out if they have any future plans. But I do know they've run some ticketing operations out there, and they did do a speed survey out there also.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
All right, we got our first speaker queued up here. We've got him out on the East Coast, so he's 3 hours ahead of us. I'm sure he's about to fall asleep. It's about 9:50 out there, so we want to sort of move along with the show here. Brent is Lee is our representative here in the Wood Streets at Riverside Unified. It's a mouthful. School District. A lifelong resident of Riverside, proud graduate of RUSD, was elected to the board in 2013. Student of Washington Gage and graduate of Poly. He's got a BS in Economics and International Relations, a minor in Spanish from the University of San Diego, master's degree in management from Anderson School of Management at the University of California, Riverside. He's a real estate broker here in town, co-owner of Windermere Tower Properties. And so I don't want to go too, it's a long bio I've got here.
Yada.
And involved in just about everything you can imagine in this community. Let me just read a few of them here. Past president of the PIC Group, graduate of the Greater Riverside Chamber of Commerce Leadership Riverside program, served on the Riverside Charter Review Committee, the Parking, Traffic and Streets Commission, International Relations Council, YWCA Board of Directors, Riverside International Film Festival Committee, on CBU's Dean's Executive County, Riverside Medical Clinic's Charitable Foundation Board, Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Inland Empire Area Board, Historic Evergreen Memorial Cemetery Board of Director. He's married and they have to his wife Anna, and they have 3 children. And most importantly, they live here in the Wood Streets. So welcome, Mr. Lee. Did I miss anything?
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. No, I think that's more than enough that anybody wants to hear. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the NOWS group inviting me. And yes, like Jason shared, I've lived in the Wood Streets for more than 15 years now, first on Castlereagh and now on Beechwood. So I appreciate neighborhood groups like yours and the great work that you do. As Jason mentioned, I'm on the board. I've been on since 2013. I'm serving my 2nd term. And really, it's just a great pleasure to be able to serve the students and the community here in Riverside, place I grew up. Is it possible for me to share my screen, Jason?
Sure, you got it. Give me 1 second.
Or no?
Yeah, but you got to make a promise that you give it back to me afterwards. You can't just go rogue on me. Hold on a second.
No problem.
There you go. You're good. You got it?
Okay, perfect. And thank you. Where is it? Okay. All righty. All right. Sorry, guys. Nope, that's not right. You have to forgive me. Present. All right, there we go. All right. So anyways, I just want to briefly share a few of the goals the district and the board has that we've been working on over the last few years. And the first and foremost is equity. We really made a designated effort and put forward resources to try to bridge that opportunity gap that exists in communities like ours and communities across the country. So one thing that we did back in 2017 is convene an equity task force made up of members of the community. And these include nonprofit leaders, higher education leaders, community leaders, members of our staff, teachers, counselors, principals, classified staff. And they really came together to try to look at the needs that the district had, to try to address some issues like implicit bias, and race, institutional racism, things like that. So this group convened over the last 4 years and helped bring some suggestions to the board that have made a big impact. And as a result of the work of this group, we've changed our mission. We've added to our mission. We've changed some of our goals. We've changed our practices in terms of educating our student population and our staff. And we continue this work every day. So I'm really proud of the work that the staff has done to try to help address, probably the biggest issue that we have in education is this opportunity gap. So I know there's still a lot of work to do, but as we continue to work on these 4 tenets of eliminating disparities, working on inclusivity, increasing outcomes for certain student groups, and just finding mutual respect for everybody in our community. This continues to be a goal of the board and of the district. Next one I want to highlight is just we really have a focus on trying to get more students graduating from our high schools. When I came onto the board, our graduation rate was hovering just over 80%. And I take no credit for this. I give it all to our staff and our teachers and the good work that they're doing. And now you can see that we're at over 96% graduation rate. So 15% higher than we were 8 years ago. In terms of number of students, this is more than 400 students graduating than there were just 8 years ago. And I'm sure Renee, our superintendent, could share the dollar figure or about dollar figure, what that means in terms of more income that our students are going to be earning in hopes that they stay here in Riverside. But it is significant. Also, a goal that we've been working on and continue to improve is our A through G completion rate. And this is the metric that we measure for our UCs and our Cal State requirements so that our students can go to one of those institutions. So right now, just over 50% of our students are completing that benchmark, which is also a big improvement from the last 10 years or so. But we continue to try to put more students, give them more opportunities to graduate from a 4-year institution should they choose to do that. The next one I wanted to mention is our Heritage program. So this is something that our superintendent, Renee Hill, when she was on our executive cabinet, worked with our counselors on. We noticed that, when we were looking at our opportunity gap, that our African-American students were not achieving at the same rate as some of our other student groups. So there was an intentional focus put on our African-American students. And at first really started just at looking at their course selection that they were taking and finding out that they just sometimes were not signing up or not being signed up for the correct courses to graduate on time or to graduate with their A through G completion rate. So it started with that, and it's kind of evolved over the years to be more of a support for African-American students and some of the unique needs that they have to help them graduate at a higher rate and be more prepared for college or career. One of the things I'll mention here on the screen you see is the HBCU, that's for historically Black colleges and universities. So we partnered with this group a few years ago, and since that partnership, they've come out to Riverside pre-COVID in person and met with our students and did on the spot approvals to get into their acceptances to get into their universities, and for some students on-site scholarships to the tune of, you can see, over $11 million. Next one I want to mention is our dual language immersion program. This is something that's really unique, I think, to Riverside. While many districts in our region have similar programs, ours is one of the largest. We have 9 schools, and we'll soon be expanding to 12. And almost 2,000 students, you can see, are participating in this program. This is where, starting in kindergarten, our students are learning both Spanish and English simultaneously, with the goal of being bilingual and biliterate by the time they're in 6th grade. So this program started about 11 years ago. So in 2 years, we'll have our first cohort of students graduating from this program. Career technical education. So I know that when I was campaigning both times, this was something I heard loud and clear from the community, that schools spend a lot of resources on making sure our students have the opportunity to go to college, but college isn't for everybody. And this is something that I know So I think it's really important that while we focus on preparing our students for college or the university, we need to also prepare them for our career as well. So we've expanded pathways in our schools over the last 7 years from 12 pathways up to 42. And we have, I wrote some of them down, some of the programs that we have: building and construction, health science, medical technology, transportation, and engineering. So we really try to look at our community and some of the opportunities that exist in the career field here in Riverside, in a short distance around Riverside, that would be available to our students if they had those skills, and then partner with businesses and our community college to create those partnerships so students have those opportunities should they decide to go into the career field immediately after they leave us in RUSD. So one of the things we've done the last few years is we've done a dual enrollment program with RCC, right, which is right in our backyard in the Wood Streets. And students simultaneously earn high school and college credit through RCC. So that's a great program. And we're hopeful, I think, in the next year, as more opportunities for these dual enrollment classes come available, that some students, should they really be focused on that career path, will be able to graduate with their high school diploma as well as an associate's degree at the same time. STEM, STEM is a buzzword, I think, in education. We know that a lot of opportunities after their K-12 experience are in the STEM fields. We know there's lots of openings for jobs in these fields. So we've really made a focus on providing STEM experiences for our students, regardless of where they live in our district. And we've done those things through virtual STEAM classes, Inspire Her Mind, which is a program to encourage more females to get into the STEM field. Our STEP conference that Gordon Borns and other businesses have been active in promoting, our science and engineering fairs, and so our social innovation challenge.
Hey, Brent, I'm going to ask you to kind of wrap
so
it
those
up.
were
Because we got to get to questions and answers.
Yep, I'm done. So those were the main goals. Yep, those were the main points I wanted to focus on. And then I'll turn it over to you, Jason, for any questions that anybody might have.
I think first of all, let's get a few through a few of the topics, and we'll open up to questions. I guess the first one is for folks on the call who may have kids or know people who have kids and may want to inform them. What's the district's plan for the fall as far as back to school? And is virtual, hybrid, physically back, for anybody who may not be in the loop?
So we're back. We've been back since last school year. We had a fair number of our students when we started 2021 school year decide to do the virtual program. I think about 20%. Is that right, Ms. Hill? Somewhere around there, 20% of our students.
Yeah.
And we found that was one of the bright spots that we learned in COVID. There wasn't a whole lot of great things that happened when our school sites were shut down. But one thing we did learn is that some of our students, not very many of them, but some of our students do learn better virtually. So we are continuing to offer that program for our students who choose to enroll in a virtual program, whether because they learn better or they're still fearful of going back to school because of the pandemic. So we will still offer a virtual program to those students. We created a virtual school with its own principal moving next year, and we also have a homeschool program that we offered starting last year, and we're continuing to offer. It's not quite as popular. I think about 1% of our students are enrolled in that, but that is an option where our staff will support a parent and offer our curriculum so that students can learn on a home-based system as well. But we will be back opening our doors again starting in August.
Now, I saw, I was at one of the more recent school board meetings, and there were a group of parents down there. And I guess their grievance was the conditions under which the kids who are going back to school have to, I guess, put up and endure, whatever you want to call it, during school. And so could you tell us a little bit, I don't know much about that. Do the kids have to wear a mask? Is there social distancing? What are the kind of the rules that are being are in place there?
Yeah, so we're constantly monitoring, best practices and local guidance from our healthcare professionals. And right now, the directive that we're getting from public health officials is that since the majority of the students under 12 are not vaccinated, that students will still wear a mask to start the school year inside. Outdoors, a mask will not be required, but indoors, a mask will be required at this time. I believe at our next board meeting next week, if not the following meeting, there's going to be potentially an item on the agenda about a discussion about that. We're really under the guidelines of the state. So we have heard from some parents about some concerns about masks and how they may not be the best thing for students in trying to hear and understand as they're learning to read and write and speak and all those things. So there'll be more discussions of that, and the board may choose to pass a resolution or something like that, asking the state to give us better guidance or give us more leeway for local decision making.
Sure. Any questions? Because before we open up on Measure O and some other financial issues going on at the district, any questions from the general membership about what's going on at RUSD or back to school plans? I don't see any hands up, and I don't see any in the chat. So I'll go into the second scheduled topic, which is Measure O. Now, as you are aware, there's some part of the community, I don't think it's de minimis, that believe that the money was supposed to be directed to the existing schools. The board has taken the position that, that it can be directed towards new schools, which is kind of strange because we do have declining enrollment at RUSD. I don't know why we'd open up 4 new schools unless we're thinking about closing some of the existing schools. Are we thinking about closing some of the existing schools, Brent?
No, there's been no discussions about closing any schools.
Okay, so I guess my question is, how would you sort of, I guess, defend or justify that decision to open up particularly 3 elementary schools when we know that RUSD has declining enrollment?
Well, we have two schools that we've discussed about putting money from Measure O towards, is a school on the east side, as well as a school in Casablanca. There were 2 schools in these neighborhoods in the past. One, Lowell Elementary, burned down, and this was at the same time, 1965, when schools were desegregating. So at that time, the school district voluntarily desegregated, and those students were bused to different elementary schools. Same thing with Casablanca. That school did not burn, but it was same thing, desegregation. So they bused those students. To this day, those students are still bused. And some of those students are spending over an hour on the bus each day. So this was a priority for those 2 communities. And for others, as I mentioned, the opportunity gap, trying to make sure we're creating a positive and productive learning environment for those students. You mentioned declining enrollment. This is a generational phenomenon. This is happening across the country. Lower birth rates, people having less kids. So that's just a normal phenomenon that's happening, at least in California. Additionally, most of our schools were built in the 60s and the 70s, and they were designed for students, for a student population of roughly 600. We have schools right now that are over 1,000. So while we do have some declining enrollment in various parts of the district, our schools are at or over capacity, and that's currently being solved by portables. And when we did some community engagement to find out before we put Measure O on the ballot what communities wanted, one of the main things they wanted was less portables because they felt like those weren't the best learning environments, especially for little people. So we prioritized that. So that's one of the reasons why we're building neighborhood schools.
So will we have no portables at all by the time we've spent all the Measure O funds, if that was one of the highest priorities?
Yeah, unfortunately not. I wish that was the case. When we did our planning, we determined at the time in 2015 or so that there was about $1.5 billion in need for our school district in terms of facilities. So we knew that Measure O was going to take a pretty large bite at the apple, but it was not going to take that whole bite of the apple. So this is going to get us hopefully a good portion of the way there in addressing some of the needs that our district has for facilities, but it won't get us all the way there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to take a general poll of the folks on this call. My contention has always been that the Measure O was intended to address the needs of the existing schools. was there anybody who's on this call right now from the general membership of NOWS who thought that new schools were going to be part of the Measure O program, or were people more along the lines of what I thought, which was to fix the existing needs? Is there anybody who's want to raise their hand and say, I thought that there were 4 new schools as part of this bond measure? Because that's what I keep coming back to is, and by all means, raise your hand and I'll recognize you, put it in the chat or whatever. Everyone here has thick skin, so nobody will be offended by it, I can assure you. And is that, you know, regardless of whatever the legalese allows folks to do, if the district sells it as it should be addressing the existing schools, then it should be addressing the existing schools, regardless of what some clever scheming lawyer says they put in the bond language to fool the public. I think that's a real public policy problem if that's the way this thing was rolled out. So I don't see anybody raising their hand. I'll go to the second question, which is, and it's along the lines of Measure O with fixing the existing schools, is that recently it's been revealed by your maintenance facility director that the district has a unfunded deferred maintenance liability of, I believe, somewhere around $250 million, which is just an extraordinary number to me. It's extraordinary. And that's an off balance sheet liability. And that's essentially maintenance that the district needs to get done above and beyond whatever's going to be done in Measure O, that for which we have no funds for. How did we, I mean, I know that when Measure O passed, we cut our maintenance budget by 90%, right? How do you reconcile those things and what's the path forward, Brent?
You know, I would kind of liken it to some of our houses in the wood streets, right? We have our project list of all of the things that we would love to do to keep our house in the condition that optimal condition, right? But there's only so much money to go around. And unfortunately, long before I was on the board, decades ago, California changed the way in which they fund public education. And they virtually eliminated designating any funds for facility projects. California is ranked, I think, 45th, 44th in terms of per student funding in the country. So unfortunately, there's just not enough money to go around. So we've prioritized over the last 10 years or so, trying to really make an effort in the classroom so that we can address some of those issues that I shared at the beginning of the presentation. And we've been relying on the community. We're grateful for the 70% of the folks that did vote for Measure O and saw the need to support our facilities here in Riverside. We're hopeful that the state will put a bond also on the ballot in the coming year. They put one on 2 years ago, and it narrowly did not pass. But the state of California has a pretty good track record in supporting facilities for schools. I think it's somewhere around 95%. So we're confident that in the coming years that there'll be additional funds for facilities so that we can address some of those facilities deferred maintenance that needs to be addressed. And also Measure O does, the majority of the funds do go to fixing existing schools. I'm sure all of you, Magnolia was mentioned, even though I'm with you on those people driving too fast. Even if you drive by fast, you notice the changes there at Magnolia. And we were able to build a new kindergarten wing. Previously, we have a lot more kindergartners than we did when that school was built. And those kids were not in kindergarten classrooms. Kindergarten classrooms are supposed to be designed a certain way and of a certain size and have bathrooms and sinks and all those things, and they didn't have that. So we're grateful to the community for seeing the need, and you can see your tax dollars right there at Magnolia.
So I'm gonna I guess counterpoint that a little bit. Is I believe that an elementary school costs about 35 million to build, somewhere around there. I think the STEM school is on the books for about 60 million, maybe 65 million. Well, you add all that up, I think Measure O is a $400 million bond. You're talking about 165 million. So even though the majority might be going to the existing schools, that's still a pretty good chunk of change. The second thing I want
60 million, just a quick counterpoint on that.
Sure.
The 60, which I don't know if that's right, those funds will not come from Measure O. Those funds will have to be matched by the state.
Okay, that's fine. And that's true, right? You do get some state matching, and you get to leverage some of that versus
half comes from the state.
The local voters will accept. I wanted to get back to the idea of balance. I understand the point that you want to put the money into the classrooms, but there has to be a balance, right? And so I liken the deferred maintenance problem to buying a new car and then not doing any of the tune-ups and any of the oil changes, right? That car's not going to last as long. If you're not doing maintenance, you cut your maintenance budget by 90%. Your 15, car that should last for 15 years lasts for 7. And then you got to buy a new car. And how do you buy the new car? Well, you tap your capital improvement program, which is Measure O. And I think that that's not a wise, nor it's not really respecting the taxpayers, in my opinion. It's a waste of money, and there needs to be more of a balance, right? We've been completely out of balance. And my guess is that deferred maintenance liability has really grown a large part during the last 7 or 8 years. You've been there for 8 years. Why would taxpayers support a new bond if that's the way our money's being handled?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a discrepancy in the data, right? So you share that there's a 90% cut in a deferred maintenance, and that was because the deferred maintenance budget was higher for a short number of time. I mean, when our previous superintendent, our interim superintendent, was the previous CBO, our financial person, he was reserving over 20% of our budget for reserves. So we had additional funds at that time, and we were able to increase our deferred maintenance budget to make up for some of the past deferred maintenance that was not done previous to that. So we were able to, for a number of years, have a higher number of deferred maintenance budget, which I think was about $5 million. But that was only because those reserves were being kept. This board decided that we should not be using today's dollars on anything but today's students. So we prioritized those dollars to go into the classroom for the students in which the money was being given to in that year. And so once those reserves got spent down from before, there was not additional funds for the deferred maintenance budget that we had previously. Because of COVID, there were some additional funds that were prioritized for Riverside Unified by the state and by the federal government. So there's opportunities to use some of those one-time funds for some of the deferred maintenance budget. So that's still something that's going to be discussed with the community and also with the board. So hopefully we can knock some of that liability down.
And I was really encouraged to see that at the last meeting, the board decided this was a high priority item and it needed additional discussion. There aren't any, to your knowledge, any unfunded deferred liabilities as far as the maintenance goes out there that present current safety risks to the kids, are there? High safety risks that you're aware of?
No,
okay.
Not that I'm aware of. And if there was, they would be addressed.
Okay. So you've reviewed that list?
What list are you speaking about?
I think the manager, the maintenance manager, said during his presentation that there's a list that he actually keeps and he ranks them by all sorts of different categories, one of them being safety.
As you mentioned, I'm on the East Coast. I wasn't at the last meeting, unfortunately, so I'm not aware of the comment.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
But I'm sure. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us. Any other real quick questions that we're going to get on? We've got Mayor Lock Dawson already with us, and maybe one question if there's one out there. Otherwise, we're going to jump over to the mayor. And Brent, go get yourself a nice Frosty and have a nice night's rest. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor Lock Dawson, for letting me go first. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
All right.
Everybody.
Thank you. Karen, do you have a question?
Well, I was going to ask Brent real quick, when these new buildings are being built to replace the temporary, what do you call them? The portables. Does anybody ever consult with the school or the neighborhood and the style of it being built? Because honestly, at Magnolia, it's horrible. It looks like a Orange County strip mall, I think. But, it's all different colors. It's got, first when it had the arches, I said, oh, they're staying with the style of auditorium. And when it was finished, I said, what in the heck did they do? At least when they added it onto Central, they made it look like the existing school. It was part of it. Magnolia is horrible.
Karen, it's supposed to match the new downtown library. No, that's just a joke. I'm just joking. Just joking.
They added all this stuff, these arches, these things on the wall. I mean, and all that is extra expense, I'm sure. You know, they couldn't model it after the auditorium that's been there since the 20s.
Real quick, Brent, you want to address that?
Yeah, they do. We do before they build anything, they meet with the staff and the community, at least the school community. I'm not sure how if they get into every neighborhood. I know with certain school projects they do. That particular one, I'm not 100% sure, but they do talk to the school site to figure out what the priority is. And honestly, Karen, I'm with you. When I first saw that go up, I really liked the architecture. I liked the style. And then when they went with that paint scheme, I was like, what happened? And I know there was something to do with they wanted bright colors for kindergartners, so I'm not exactly sure. But we always appreciate feedback, and we've got lots more projects to go through. So we're always happy to hear about how we can do things better for future projects.
All right, Brent, thank you for joining us. We'll let
Thank
you
you.
go. Thank you very much. We could have actually had Patricia answer that question. It hasn't been that long since she's been on the school board, right? You could have. Let me introduce our next speaker. Patricia Lock Dawson is a native Riversider, small business owner in environmental science who has served our city for over 20 years. She was most recently a trustee on the Riverside Unified School Board District, elected in 2011. Patricia has long been an active leader in the community. She is the past chairman of the Riverside City Planning Commission, served as a gubernatorial appointee to the California Board of Behavioral Sciences, and serves on several other boards, or at least did it when this bio was written. I think she's had to leave a few of those. She's been on the UCR Alumni Board, the Riverside Art Museum, Rivers and Lands Conservancy. She's advocated for and secured millions in state and federal funds to expand parks and recreational opportunities in inland Southern Californians. Patricia grew up in the Greenbelt of Riverside as the youngest child of 5. She went on to earn her bachelor's of science degree in biology from the University of California, Riverside, and a master's of science degree in wildlife from the University of Washington, Seattle. She and her husband Scott reside in Candy Crust neighborhood with their 3 daughters. I guess I don't have to name them individually, but thank you for joining us. It's great to have the mayor with us. This is a huge coup for the neighbors of the Wood Streets. Patricia, anything I missed? I think you're on mute. There you go. I got you.
Okay. You know when you switch back and forth between your AirPods and your audio goes to a different place.
Yep.
Anyway, sorry. Thanks. I was just laughing because you said it was a huge. What did you say? Coup for the Wood Streets, and honestly, my sympathies are with you. That's what I'm gonna say. But thank you for having me tonight. I'm really excited to be here with this beautiful city behind me, as you can see. It's wonderful to be in Riverside, and it's always a pleasure to see you, Jason. Thank you for inviting me. And it's a pleasure to see my colleagues, Brent and Renee from RUSD. I can't say enough good things about both of them, so thanks.
Yeah. Maybe you could go just real quick, maybe in part of your introduction. I know you've got a platform for Riverside. I think it's 5 points, 6 points. I forget which one. Maybe go through that a little bit for folks on the call.
I do. I have five priorities that I would say are the highest priorities within my office. But I was going to talk about 3 top ones just so we can, because we only have about 15 minutes. I want to make sure. So I wanted to go into those if that's okay with you. The other ones are,
Absolutely.
I can name them, but not that big of a deal. One of the biggest things for me is building community and our quality of life here. I think it's very important. Riverside has a very strong, connected, and caring community. And to that end, I'm doing something I'm calling the Big Tent Tour. And that is, I'm going to each one of our 26 neighborhoods and just setting up shop for a day and inviting all the neighbors in the neighborhood to come tell me what's interesting and unique about their neighborhood. And I want to hear about that so we can build on the good things that are there. So this Saturday, I have my first Big Tent Tour is in La Sierra. And I'm going to be in your neighborhood in the Wood Street. So mark your calendars for November 13th at Central Middle School. And I don't know who made the comment about the school, but I agree. I thought the same thing when I drove by. I did too. I'm with Brent. So I'll be at Central Middle School on November 13th. So please come tell me, what's on your mind. I want to hear ideas for how to make our city even better than it is, and would love to hear from you. Secondly, probably one of my highest priorities is that I have no ambition less than making Riverside an international center for clean and green tech jobs and innovation. We have every element in place for this calculus to be successful. We've got CARB coming in. We have UCR's OASIS program getting off the ground. We've got CCERT, which does emissions research. We have abundant wind and solar energy, renewables. We've got everything in place that we need to create a cluster economy around clean and green tech jobs and innovation. So, and it's all of that is nestled, where most of it is nestled in our innovation district in the city. So we have some really, really cool opportunities. It's our bad. It's on us if we can't make that work. The Brookings Institution put out a report in 2018 on elements of a successful cluster economy. And by cluster economies, I think you know what I mean, but like the Bay Area, Silicon Valley is a cluster economy. LA is a cluster economy for movies and entertainment. So we want Riverside to have a cluster economy for clean and green tech jobs. The Brookings Institute report identified three main factors that contribute to a successful cluster. And that is to have a university that provides the research with a physical building for that, industry-driven, which we have here between our emissions research and engine technology and all of those things that go along with it, and government-supported. Government, university, industry-driven. If we can't make this work in Riverside, it's going to be hard to make it fail. So I'm really working on that, and I'm going to launch this summer. There will be an announcement regarding something I'm calling the Mayor's Venture Catalyst Challenge, which is going to be a competition for good tech ideas. And I'm currently raising funds for prize money for that. So stay tuned for that. And I will also be working with UCR's OASIS Center to hold a angel investor tech summit in the fall, in which we will bring venture capitalists and angel investors to hear pitches and ideas on various companies that they can be a part of. So big things going on there, which I'm very excited about. Thirdly, actually, because I think I talked about, is homelessness. And I think that's top of mind for most people in the city. It's something we hear the most about. And it's not just Riverside, right? It's every community across the state. Nay, I say country. I think everybody's dealing with it right now. I'm not interested in assigning blame and pointing fingers. I see that a lot, right? I see that, well, it's the state's fault. Well, it's the county's fault. All right, who the heck cares whose fault it is? It's a problem, and we have to address it, right? And to that end, I'm the only one I know, as far as I know, that's actually looked at this and developed an overall strategy that I'm trying to work to implement. But with Councilmember Edwards has been shoulder to shoulder and great ideas and a wonderful advocate for this. So she's been really wonderful to help. We know what our populations are. We have behavioral health problems. We have people with mental illness. We have alcohol and drug addiction. We have a criminal element there. And then we have people that just need help. Each one of those populations requires something different, right? We need enforcement action against those who would do criminal harm to others. We need behavioral health supports for those who are struggling with addiction and mental health support. And we need a leg up, a hand up for those who are about to lose their homes or who have lost their homes or who need job training or need employment. So we have those populations. Now we also have what I call the three buckets of supports and fixes, I guess, for lack of a better term. We have the state of California, which has various legislative issues that we can address. We've got the county, who's charged with doing things, and then we have the city, who's charged with doing things, right? So there are some things that really can happen at the state that I'm really pushing for. One is to really lean into implementing something called Laura's Law, which we really pushed the county to adopt this year. Laura's Law actually allows a judge to compel those who need help to get help, right? They have to be able to take services, and they must be given services. Laura's Law, so getting supports for that and getting that in place. Going along with that, though, there's a code, the California Code of Section 5150, which many of you may know is something that allows police officers to bring people suffering from an acute mental crisis in for evaluation. Tragically, they are often back out on the street. There's a section of that code that can be amended to help us get more people help. And I can talk more about that, but I'll just leave it there. So there's a couple things there. And the third piece of the state piece is conservatorship and making sure that the people who are most vulnerable are in the hands of those who will take care of them. And so there are ways to work with our state legislature to get some of that stuff done. The county, going to the county now. The county gets all of the mental health funding in the state from different pots, but they get it all. It is their responsibility, not the city's. It is their responsibility to provide services and get the mental health supports to people, right? But they have to have a place to do that, right? Where are they going to do it? They're going to give somebody services in a field on the side of the street? They need to get them physically into a location. So I'm working with the county to identify properties where we can bring in money that I've advocated for through our Big City Mayors Group to build facilities where we can get people in. Did you know that our jails are our de facto mental institutions right now? 40% of our population in jail has a mental health issue, and that's why they're there. That is not right. That is not humane. We cannot allow that to happen. As a society, we need to say that's unacceptable. So we need to work with our county to get those facilities built. Because I mentioned things like strengthening Laura's Law, strengthening Section 5150, strengthening conservatorship. You can do all that. But if they have nowhere to go, if your judge compels somebody to get help, they have to go somewhere to get it. So the county piece has to be satisfied. The city piece. The city piece is one of the ones we are often left holding the bag on having the least options. And this is something Councilmember Edwards and I spend a lot of hours talking about. We have some opportunities, right? We have a no camping ordinance in the city. I don't know if you know that, but we're limited in its enforcement because we have to be able to provide a bed for somebody. If they are living on the street, it's not illegal to live on the street if they have no other place to go. We have a no camping ordinance. So back to that piece with the county, they need to be building beds. So we need to have a place to have those beds. But the city can also participate in that as well. So, and I need to be working with my regional cities around me to do that. Also, something I think we need to explore is perhaps looking at what I call the, the 3 times of help rule. And I talked with Councilmember Edwards about this as well. If you are not accepting of services, there has to be consequences for that. And it can't go on indefinitely. You've probably heard people have to be asked 20 separate times, I think, before they actually will accept help. We have to be very careful in how we do this, but we probably should define what it means to refuse services and then also have some consequences for doing that. And that's probably within the city's jurisdiction. We could probably have an ordinance that addresses that. So those are all things. And then lastly, working with our surrounding cities to return people who are here availing themselves of our services to their communities of origin so they can get the supports they need where they're from. So all of that needs to happen. That's a big thing. On top of that, you know, we need to have more positive things going on too. And I'm working on that end too, right? I'm trying to get funding. We got $1 billion. I don't know if you saw that. $1 billion I advocated through the Big City Mayors Group to cities over the next couple of years. We're going to get $2 billion for specifically for housing and mental health supports. So trying to bring in money, trying to launch programs that we've got a Santa Ana River Economic Development Program going on now where we can perhaps have some positive uses along the river, which will obviate some of the more negative uses. So that's the kind of stuff too. It's another piece of the pie. Woo! I'm so sorry. You can tell I'm very passionate about this because it's top of mind right now. But it's not a simple thing, and we are often bound by bad legislation and bad ballot measures and bad court decisions that we're left holding the bag that we got to figure out how to fix. All right, that's I think the last one that I wanted to talk to you about.
Well,
And then the other.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Education education was important to me. I think was one of my other ones, and economic development, which I covered. So, okay, I'm going to stop, and then.
Well, you missed my intro. We were talking about National Night Out and how we needed a sponsor. So if you got $1 billion, we could use like $1 million or $2 million, and we'd have a really great party. I got to tell you, we already have the best party, but we're talking about something from the out of this world party. So if you just got it laying around, I
wouldn't call it that.
Yeah.
Here's a good thing. Let me say something about that though. We had a discussion. I talked to the governor's office a couple weeks ago. I brought in Supervisor Spiegel with me to talk about how can the county and the city work together to avail ourselves of that money, right? And the guy from the governor's office was like, blink, blink, blink. Who? What? I haven't had any cities or counties come talk to me about this. He said, you're the first. And I said, well, then you could just tells you how superior we are. So, but we were first out of the gate. And I think that's how we roll here in Riverside is we are often out in front because we don't get a lot of love down here. So we have to activate it ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop there because I think I used up my 15 minutes, and then we can probably open it for questions, right, Jason?
Yeah,
Is that what you want to do?
get a couple quick questions because any questions from the general membership, raise your hand. Try to raise your hand in the participants panel as well. If I can't see you because your screen is off, I have questions already preloaded, but I'm going to let everyone have the opportunity first. Any hands, anything in the chat. Going once, going twice. See, I didn't say it really quick. I didn't go going once, going twice, sold. Okay, so my question is you touched on the clean and green industry. And I think that's great, right? We need jobs here in Riverside because we can't keep sending people down to 91. I hope everyone kind of understands that is not sustainable to keep growing the city and sending and all the jobs are just sitting on the coast and there's nothing out here for lots of reasons, including pollution and just quality of life, et cetera, et cetera. But yet I try to counterbalance that with what's going on in the housing element. And I think that there's a big battle coming down the road here over the next several months about the housing element and some of the things inside of it and some of the kind of requirements being pushed upon us by the state. And so we have a little bit of an, and I know you're aware of it, where we look at the wood streets and we're about quality of life for the existing residents. We try to be welcoming to the people who are passing through, coming to events, future residents as well. But first and foremost, we got to take care of the existing residents who are here already paying the taxes, right? The people who are already vested, they've already laid down a huge wad of cash to live here. And so our concern is about the density, and it may not be here now, but I just gotta tell you, it's coming because I see the listings. I see the listings and people are talking about adding the ADUs and maybe even junior ADUs onto their properties here in the wood streets, which is going to create all sorts of externalities here. And the one that, and secondly, we've got a second issue, which is a little bit different, which is an open development over on Palm coming up from Tekaskeet, where that's always been planned to put it's an odd shaped lot of about an acre. And the plan has always been to put 3 or 4 houses there. Now, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, after 7 years of sitting on a shelf, there's an active plan by a developer, and we're going to talk a little bit more with Erin about it later, but an active plan by a developer to put 7 houses on that one little acre, like triangular sized lot, 2 stories high, 7 or 8 variances allowed on that property, 2 stories high, overlooking the neighbors' backyards, right? And we think, where did this come from? 7 years ago, I wasn't even living in the wood streets, right? Conditions have changed substantially. But it's really about the density. And our big concern is, I've been going back and forth with the city, and I just feel like, quite frankly, I'm getting the runaround from the public works, and I'm getting the runaround from the sewer department. It is our primary concern. And we have other long-term concerns, but our primary concern is we're worried about density that all of a sudden shoots up and it overcomes our capacity when it comes to our infrastructure. In particularly the sewer infrastructure, which we know from the 2019 sewer master plan is already inadequate. We know that, right? Sewer department keeps on trying to convince me that I'm reading the report wrong. Excuse me, I know a few things about engineering. I did go to MIT. So I think I'm reading the report correctly. And so, could you address, there's been a lot of people concerned about the density being pushed into the existing neighborhoods, particularly in infill sites. And also, do we need to fine tune these ADU regulations? Because we really rolled out a one size fits all for every single community when we did this. And you weren't here when that happened, I understand, but could you address some of those issues? It's a big concern for this neighborhood.
I know it. Well, I think it's a big concern for a lot of neighborhoods. I saw somebody put in the chat about coming out against SB 9. City of Riverside signed on to a letter from Southern California Association of Governments, which I approved, against SB 9. So I'm not sure what you're referring to, but we did sign on to that letter. Additionally,
could you talk a little bit about what SB 9 is, because everybody
Sure.
here might not be in the
Sure.
know.
SB 9 is a bill by Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins, who is essentially it'll do. I think the end result of it will do away with single family zoning for the most part. It's going to allow split lots. So every single family zoning is going to be split lot for the most part, and so it will increase density even more, right? And the idea is to get more, I think, people into houses, which is a good thing. I think that's a good thing. However, as is always the case, we need to think through the consequences of those things. So we did bring our concerns to the Senate Pro Tem. We talked with her about them. We were respectful. She chose not to, I think, incorporate some of the concerns from the Southern California Association of Governments. So we did write a letter of opposed unless amended. So that was on our docket. Additionally, as part of the Big City Mayors Coalition, I was asked to sign on to a letter of support, which I did not. So just to let you know, just want to set the record straight on that. To your point, Jason, this is another one of those things, and I'm not pointing fingers and, blaming people, but this is another one of those cases where we have a series of state legislation that is going to make it difficult for us to do things. So whatever we do here, we need to do it thoughtfully and well, right? So the train left the station with ADUs between SB 13, AB 68, AB 881. I mean, there's been a series of laws that have been passed, right, that have been signed into law that have made ADUs a reality here in California. So having said that, being Riverside, we'll do things differently. We'll do it well. We'll do it thoughtfully. We'll make sure we have the infrastructure to support it. We'll monitor it. We'll assess it regularly. I think that's pretty consistent with what Councilmember Edwards, I think, has. I'm looking for a nod from her. Is that correct? I want to make sure that That's right. But I think we can't do things. I don't ever think it's okay just to say no, but because our hands are going to get tied, we could be litigated against all kinds of stuff. But I do think we need to be thoughtful about what we're doing. And I think we will do that.
Okay. I see that, Richard, you have your hand up. You have the floor. Unmute yourself.
I just have a question that doesn't even deal with that. I've lived in Riverside for most of my 81 years. I spend a lot of time away from Riverside now, but, and I'm not in Riverside at the present time. But anyway, I've noticed the conditions of the roadways. And every time I'm in Riverside, I'm sure they're glad I'm not there because I call 311 almost 2 or 3 times a week reporting new potholes. Okay. Magnolia Avenue has been a disaster for 5 years. The road conditions in Riverside are worse than at any time during my lifetime in the city. They had a proposition a couple of years ago, Proposition Z, that some of the money was going to go to infrastructure and things like that. And lo and behold, on the wood streets, I noticed that they put a slurry coat on there. I went up and down each one of those streets. Okay, there was not one pothole on the streets that I went up and down, which was most of them. But you go out Martin Luther King Boulevard, you come down through Canyon Crest, you go Olivewood, you go Panorama, you go Ivy. Those are just the main streets I travel on. Parts of Victoria, they've fixed that. Not only that, but the cleanliness of Riverside and the it seems like City Hall, they have just beautifully trimmed trees every year. That's the home of our government. But the home of the people, the farther away you get from City Hall, the worse it gets. And I think that we should be treated and have the same things that our government does down at City Hall. And anyway, those are just a few little concerns. And I know that the COVID had an effect, but this happened long before this council was in place. And this happened long before our present mayor has been in place. So I would just like to know if there's anything lying ahead that I might not know about.
Yes. And there was a few things that got put in the chat. And just to let you know, we just approved at City Council the other night repaving of Magnolia and Brockton. So those just went through. So that's Measure Z money that you're talking about. So that's going to that. And that's happening, I think, fall. Is that? I'm sorry. I'm looking at either Philip or Councilmember Edwards. Yeah, I think so. It's coming up. So yeah, that's happening. And then you know what? The other part of that. So I think we had a little hiatus for a while on scheduling our street paving because COVID messed everything up. But I think we're back on track with the schedule. And you can go look at that schedule. We do have it. And I'm not sure if Philip has, he can put it in the chat. So you can go look at what streets are scheduled for when. And then the other part of that, Mr. Stalder, is truck traffic. Big semi-truck traffic on our roads cutting through is a real problem, not only for our roads, but air pollution, right, coming through. Yep. So we just passed an an enforcement action on Tuesday night to restrict 3 or more axle vehicles, 5-ton vehicles on parts of Van Buren, kind of up by Martin Luther King in that area. But we have to be diligent about that as well, because those trucks really, really mess up the roads.
Well, thank you very much. And I look forward in returning to Riverside later this fall and driving on smoother streets.
Well, it goes to a larger question, Patricia, is that Do you think Measure Z is being spent on the things that the public wanted it being spent on and that the council promised this community?
You know, that's a bit of a leading question, Mr. Hunter.
I
but-
asked them on equation.
I know you do. I think it is to this or we're trying. Yes, I'll just say yes. I do think so. And I think it's on top of mind for every council member to ask that question when they come into council. Is that Measure Z money going where we said it was going to? Nobody wants to dupe the public, and promises made, promises kept, right? So we're trying to hold the people who would program that funding to be as accountable as possible to the voters, as are the elected officials.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Charles, gotcha.
Yes, Mayor, you mentioned that, the ADU is a done thing and that Riverside's going to do it the right way. Okay, part of my question is, how are we going to do it the right way? Number one, we know that the sewage system in some places is over 100 years old. We try to get numbers that are going to be allowed, and nothing's ever offered up. And the other thing, what about the illegal long-standing ADUs that are already in existence? If we're going to put a number on how many we're going to have in our neighborhood, we have to include the existing illegal ones too.
I agree.
And
I agree. I think that's part of doing it right, right? I think that's part of doing it right is.
So how's that going to happen?
What's the plan?
To, I don't have an answer to that right now as to what's the plan for identifying where illegal ADUs are, because I wasn't prepared to answer that, but I'm happy to get an answer back to you at some point. Jason, as you know, I always get back to you on things.
Yes,
I don't
you
want
do.
to say something politically correct or wrong for that matter. So, but I think, and Councilmember Edwards, I think, has had a deeper dive into this and may be able to address some of those when she speaks. But I think we need to know where those ADUs are. I mean, there's technology to suss them out. I mean, there's neighbors to suss them out. There's information that we can get, but nobody wants those on there either. So we need to make sure that those are not, we don't tolerate them, I guess.
I guess in closing, we'll let you go because we're going to get on to Councilmember Edwards and you got to get on to your evening. But in closing, I'd just like to say that we don't want to end up like the university neighborhood, okay, who got caught behind the eight ball when it came to the frat houses and the cut-ups and all that went on over there. And by the time the community finally rallied, there would have been permanent damage to that neighborhood. And it's my belief, just looking at the listings, okay, and following trends and seeing what's going on around California and the country, is that when the investor community does find out that there's the availability to put ADUs into the wood streets and nobody has to live there, they can just rent them all out and dump their impacts onto the existing neighborhood and destroy our quality of life or certainly degrade it. We don't want to be in that position. So we have a planning department here, not a reaction department. It's called the planning department for a reason. And so we think that we've got some legitimate concerns, and if we need to keep, beating the drums louder and louder and louder until we get them addressed, we're prepared to do that here as a community group. We don't feel like we've really gotten to that point yet, and we need to have some serious discussions.
Well, one of the things I will tell you is that we are having a workshop. I think I might have mentioned this to you, Jason, but Councilmember Edwards and I are working with the Mayor's Housing Task Force to have a series of workshops on ADUs where we're going to have presentations on, what constitutes a good ADU, what the laws are, what permits are required,
Sure.
and get information, I think, back from you all about how you think that they could work within your neighborhood.
And once again, the board is not taking the position that we're anti-ADUs because, certainly.
I didn't take it that way.
Because we understand that if you have a grandmother who's, a mother who's getting to an age, your parents you want to take care of, or kids coming back, boomerang kids coming back to school. We have concerns about investors, number one. who don't have to live in the mess they make. And number two, we think you got to do infrastructure first. Infrastructure first, then density, not the other way around. Okay, that doesn't work. So anyway, we'll let you go on that note. Thank you very much. You stayed a little bit over than we told you were going to have to stay. So we appreciate you spending your time with us. And thank you very much for coming tonight.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you. And I'm sorry I cut into your time, Councilmember Edwards. And I hope you can clarify a little bit about some of the stuff that I said. I don't want to say anything wrong. So please note that we're working together, though, on trying to make sure this is a value add to your neighborhood and it's done correctly, well, carefully, and not willy-nilly. So I just want to let
Thank
you
you
know.
very
But
The
anyway,
nice thing about a virtual meeting is we can stay a few minutes late. It's not like we're getting kicked out of the alumni house. So we can stay 5 minutes late if we need to. So anyway,
all right, I'm going to
Take care.
shut up now.
Have a
But
good
thank
night.
you for seeing us in the office. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
take care. All right. Without further ado, we have Council Member Edwards with us tonight. Want to give your ward update?
I'd love to. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all well. Jason, you've spoken like a person who doesn't have a toddler to put to bed when you said stay 5 minutes late. So I'm sorry, I'm point person on a toddler this evening. So I'll quickly share my update and then I do have to run. I'll start with the good news that has already been shared in the chat. I was so looking forward to sharing it with you. Magnolia repaving was approved this week. I know that it's been a long time coming. And Charles, I thought of you from the dais when we approved it. So the work should start in the fall. And I think it's so important and can't wait to see it happen. Another piece of good news, I know that I mentioned the Park Ranger program and how we were looking at having 20 civilian rangers spread across all 50 plus of Riverside's parks. And we were looking at, with the budget that was passed on June 22nd, including that as a new program this year, and the budget passed unanimously with that included. So this is great news. The program, they're not sworn officers, but they'll be housed within the police department. The recruitment has already begun. We'll be able to see, well, the process has already begun. We'll be able to see a job description come before City Council in the next month or so, I believe, and then we can officially start recruiting park rangers. But I've heard that there was so much excitement when our police department and city manager's office were doing the research about this program, that there are some individuals, for example, who are park rangers in other cities in Southern California, who, when they heard, because they live in Riverside, when they heard that Riverside was thinking of implementing this, they said, if you do this, I want to be one of the first to come and be a part of this program. So that's great news. And I look forward to that recruitment happening soon. As we heard from the police department, there's a lot of good work happening in the river bottom like we've never seen it before. The mayor mentioned her economic development task force, which I co-chair with Steve Hemingway in Ward 7. The police with Lieutenant Chad Milby are working very hard to do that mapping of entrance and exits so we can understand where unauthorized vehicles and ATVs are coming in addition to regional coordination that I really think has a lot of momentum behind it with the city of Corona, and of course the city of Riverside with the county that's committed a year and funding to doing some of this mapping work in addition to moving people from the river bottom into permanent housing. And in fact, other cities in the region are taking notice. Just last week, the city of Jurupa Valley asked our Office of Keika from our Office of Homeless Solutions to come with the Homeless Solutions Manager in Corona to do a presentation on what we're doing, how we're doing it, with the hopes that Jurupa Valley can also come on board. So I think this is all great news because, as the mayor said, it's going to take the whole region working together on this issue. I hope you've had a chance to see our brand new main library that celebrated its opening on the 26th of June. It really was a wonderful ribbon cutting celebration. And I think probably not too many times in our lifetime we'll be able to see the opening of a building like this that's for everyone. And so I hope you enjoy it as much as
And we'll
I
be
do.
able to see it again during your office hours next week, correct?
That's right. Everyone keeps stealing my updates. Jason, that's later in the agenda. I wanted to announce that the Art Walk has returned. It's the first Thursday of every month, the first since COVID happened the beginning of July. So start putting that on your calendar. We have a new city attorney that was hired. Her name is Phaedra Norton, and she starts on July 20th. And I know is already hitting the ground running, and I think will be a fantastic addition to our city. City Hall is open. The chambers are open for people to come sit, to watch the meeting, to give public comment. City Hall offices are open as well. So all of this is very positive and good news. I know, Jason, you had asked for an update on the development on Palm. So I just wanted to quickly share that the proposed development is already entitled. So that means that staff and all departments have analyzed it against existing infrastructure. They have made sure that the existing developments or that the existing housing around would not be affected. And so the next steps, they're waiting for the precise grading, water, sewer, electric, and building permits. So I will certainly keep you updated as I learn more about that project.
Will that be ever going before, will that be going before the planning commission or the council again, or is it done? That public input in that is done?
Well, it's entitled. So my understanding is that it is done.
So a project that more or less was entitled 7 years ago can just come off the shelf and out of nowhere, and there's no opportunity for any public comment again.
To my knowledge, this one will continue to move forward in the process. So as I said, the next steps, we're waiting for the water, sewer, electric, and building permits. But always happy to follow up with more information about this one as I learn it. I just want to make sure I get through everything on my list. So legislative updates, the meeting coming up on Tuesday, July 13th is an important one because not only are we swearing in our newest council member in Ward 2, Clarissa Cervantes, in addition to Councilmember Perry and Councilmember Condor, who also won their elections. We will be talking about the proposed ARPA expenditure. And so Paloma, if you could just put the link, please, to the report in the chat so people can see. This is a very general report about the way that the city will be using this money. We'll be receiving about $73 million from the Rescue Act. We'll be getting it in 2 segments. So we're talking about the first $32-ish million segment and in general how it will be used. And we'll be able to give feedback from the dais about these proposed buckets so we can see a more detailed expenditure later. So what that means is it is so important if you, I know we have some business owners on the call today, people who have been very deeply impacted in many different ways by COVID. It will be so important to hear from you in this meeting. You can email me directly, you can submit an e-comment, you can call into the meeting, you can come into the meeting to let us know if we're using this funding in a way that you think will best help our city recover from the year that we've lived through together. On July 20th, in the afternoon, I know the mayor's office has been working to do a ceremonial renaming of North Orange Street as Spanish Town Road, which is very wonderful and appropriate. We'll also be talking about amending our Riverside Municipal Code for sidewalk vendors, which is a conversation that has been before the Land Use Committee, which I sit on. And then of course, in the afternoon, the Charter Review Committee will be giving its recommendations for the language that they would like to see on the November ballot regarding the general fund transfer. Few other items that I'm sure many of you are following. The Cultural Heritage Board appeal of the AC Marriott project is coming before the land use meeting on Monday, July 12th in the afternoon. And after that conversation at the Land Use Committee, both that appeal of the Cultural Heritage Board decision and the Planning Commission will come before City Council on August 17th. So if that's a project that you've been following, make sure to put Monday, July 12th and August 17th in your calendar. And on August 3rd in the afternoon, we'll be discussing proposed land use regulation for our innovation district. I'm sure that you've all been following the innovation district over the years. And so it's exciting to see that there is an update coming about the land use regulation piece. I do want to share 2 additional pieces. One is about priority-based budgeting. I know that we just passed a budget, but it's important to know that it was a 1-year budget. And this 1-year budget is to get us through to the next year, where we will really be able to do our very first priority-based budget, looking at the priorities, the 6 of them that were identified by the council, and going through a very specific process within each of the departments to define what programs currently undertaken by the city match our priorities and making sure that we're funding them appropriately. And so I just wanted to let you know that even though it's great news that we passed a budget on the 22nd, budgeting season is already upon us again for the upcoming year. And we just heard this week on the dais an update on priority-based budgeting with a matrix of a first pass, looking at all the programs and seeing how they rate according to the new software. And I really encourage you to keep an eye on those documents and on this conversation, because come June of next year, it's going to be critical that we've had your input early on to shape that budget. Helping Hearts is opening this summer at the Hewling campus, which adds 23 more beds to our shelter bed numbers. I live on First and Lime. So if you're driving down First Street that turns into Mulberry, you'll notice that the Mulberry Village grading has begun, which is those 10 tiny homes, which is a partnership with Habitat for Humanity, and I think truly a great project with a lot of support from the neighborhood. So we should see those 10 tiny homes built by the end of the summer. And finally, even though Jason already announced it, I'll announce it again. We are doing our office hours for the month of July this month in person from 6:30 to 8 p.m. We're going to do it in the community room of the new main library. And for those of you who haven't been to office hours, it's an opportunity. I don't do a presentation like this. I just take your questions and we have a conversation. But for this particular office hours, the first 45 minutes, we'll have someone from the planning department come just to talk about housing and the housing element and answer your questions. So for those of you who are interested in the housing element, which is due in October, if you have questions about what role ADUs play in the housing element or what role they don't play in the housing element, this would be a great meeting for you to come to for the first 45 minutes. And then of course, stay to ask any questions you have and listen to the rest of the conversation. So that is the end of my presentation. I might have time for one question, then I have to run, but don't worry, because you can come to office hours so we can have more conversation then.
I don't want this to be the one question, but could maybe Paloma put okay, she's putting the office hours time and location down there in the chat. That's good. Okay. Any questions from the general membership for Erin? If not, we will.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I've noticed that in downtown Riverside, they have gotten away from the, and I don't know what aspect the Cultural Heritage Board plays, but with the new library, and I imagine in the eyes of the architect and many people, it's great, but it looks like a jet landing place for the takeoff for the next space shuttle. And I just wondered if we're getting away from the mission style and the old building style that we have in some of the beautiful buildings that are left. For example, I understand that on the corner of Lemon and Mission Inn, they're going to put up a nice 8-story hotel, which is going to be right across from a municipal auditorium and with a congregational church and the old YWCA, which is now the Art Museum. And we're kind of going away from that style when at one time we had a chance to be maybe the second Santa Barbara of the Inland Empire. But all of these buildings are now taking the place. And has Riverside changed and I'm just behind the times, or are enough people still interested in maintaining the mission style?
Thanks for the comment and the question, Richard. I guess I would first say, instead of being the second Santa Barbara, we'll be the best Riverside that we can be. And you know, we have many different styles of architecture in our downtown. And of course, architecture and aesthetic styles, it's very subjective. So I know there are some who dislike the library and there are some who love it. But what I remember from the library presentation years ago is how the architects really struggled to say, this is the one architectural style of our downtown, and therefore this is the one way that we will build a building to conform to it. The hotel, the 8-story hotel that you mentioned, that's the AC Marriott project that's coming before the Land Use Committee on the 12th of July. It was denied by the Cultural Heritage Board, approved by the Planning Commission. And it's, you know, again, the style of the old fire station is very different from the Julia Morgan building. And so I guess I would just say that that's what makes it so interesting and so important that we remain engaged on these conversations as we talk about a growing and changing downtown.
Just one quick comment. I grew up in Riverside when that fire station was just put up. The real fire station, that was the old style. This fire station that they have now that they're calling a historical building is no more of a historical building than a piece of junk. And if you go over, if you want to see what the old time fire stations look like in Riverside, go up University Avenue and you will notice on the left-hand side that it used to be a massage parlor that got in all kinds of trouble, but that is an old fire station and it's a beautiful thing, okay? That's exactly what I mean. This building that they're calling a historical monument that's across from the art museum, that to me, that's no more historical than these flat roof box type buildings that we have now.
Thank you, Richard.
I don't know the way.
Jason, would you like me to
Sure, Steve, go
pipe
ahead.
in as the CHB representative for
Absolutely, but
Rhode
I got to make it quick because I want to let Erin leave. She's got a young child and.
Well, actually, go ahead. Let Erin finish then.
No, go ahead, but it's got to be quick. I'm saying.
Okay. First off, as far as the fireplace is concerned, or fire station is concerned, this city has always had a thought process, or whatever you want to call it, that if I remember it, it's not historic. And that's what's happening with the fire station. You've told us how old you are, so you would remember that. The exact same thing happened with the library. I remember it, therefore it's not historic. As far as the historic districts are concerned, in my opinion, this city has pretty much foregone the historic districts for new development.
I agree.
I agree. Thank you.
What do you mean by foregone, I guess, Steve, real quick?
The hotel.
I might have to run. I'm sorry to interrupt, Steve, but I'm going to have to go to put Ramona to bed. I don't want to cut off the conversation, but we'd love to see you all at office hours.
We totally understand. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Go ahead, Steve.
The hotel that we've been discussing, the library, the apartment buildings across from the library, all of those are in historic districts, either the Mission Inn Historic District or the 7th Street Historic District, all of which have specific design guidelines that were in essence ignored through the entire process. And they have come to the Cultural Heritage Board way too late to do anything about them. This is one of the reasons that the Cultural Heritage Board denied. Actually, it did not approve. It didn't deny. It did not approve the hotel there because it does not fit yet. We're too far into the process to do it, and staff has not enforced the guidelines of the historic districts, And then all of a sudden, it's up to the CHB to say yay or nay to it. And this has been an ongoing problem. Again, the 7th Street Historic District and the Mission Inn Historic District all have very, very modern buildings in them. And staff has come to us literally with the logic that it's so different that it's compatible.
Right.
So there you go.
And it's an issue as far as ADUs go as well. And we've found that the city has not even spent a second thinking about how the ADU regulations are going to impact the historic districts. We're going to hear in September, the primary focus of our September meeting, Steve, and I'd like you to come back in September and maybe call me after the meeting. My contact information is in the chat, is going to be specifically devoted to the historic aspect of the city itself and the neighborhood in particular, and what that means and why it's important. So that is going to be the topic for September. So I'm glad that it's been queued up tonight. Charles.
It seems to me that some of the people that are involved in the decision-making about our city have what is called selective amnesia. They forget stuff when it's convenient to forget it and hope that nobody else says anything about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, well, I don't see any other hands up, so I'm gonna open it up. Are there any other topics? Because we want to make sure that we're talking about topics that are important to the community. We do have a couple more meetings that come up after September. We only meet once every 2 months, but is there anything really out there that people in the community say, you know what, we gotta get some speakers in here and discuss certain issues? Karen, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to mention 2 years ago, we were really involved with NOWS with getting our parking permits in the wood streets. We had a lot of problems getting them. So I don't know if you noticed, but your parking permits expired June 30th of 2021. So I called downtown and we were never notified of this, but they extended the validation of the parking permits until September 30th. And then they said they will contact us by email. I didn't want to get a ticket. And so I, went downtown. So I don't know if anybody else is interested in that, but at least our parking permits are still good till September 30th.
I know that at one point in time, we had actually started up or kickstarted an ad hoc parking group, that was discussing. It had representatives from the city, it had representatives from RCC and the community. Mm-hmm. I think we may need to start that up. It fizzled out over COVID, quite frankly. It just, kind of disappeared. And some of the folks that were on it actually, kind of reduced their participation in NOWS, and it just kind of died on the vine. If there are folks out there that want to, restart that committee and actually participate on it, you can't say it's an issue of concern of me and then say I want somebody else to handle it. That's no. People have to be willing to lead from the front, not from behind, on issues like that. I'm more than willing to reach out to the same people at the city, and obviously Councilman Edwards' office. Paloma's still here on the call, and RCCD. I know Chip West was very interested in talking about that stuff because, a lot of the problems in the wood streets when it comes to the parking, I don't think anyone's going to disagree with this. I don't think are caused by RCC when it's in session. And I think the problems, if you're causing the problems, you should be offering the mitigation. And if that means paying for residents' parking permits, because otherwise we wouldn't have to pay for them, then that's what RCC should be doing, quite frankly.
Well, that's another issue, is that they said, when we originally got, I had to fight for over a year to get a parking permit because I live in the middle of the block on Magnolia, not on a corner. So I was not allowed a parking permit, which was crazy. But
and there are other issues as well, not just RCC. But yeah.
They said when we renewed our parking permits, we were going to have to pay for it. We pay taxes. Why should we pay for a parking permit? It's, can we deduct it from our taxes then? That's ridiculous. They're the streets that we pay to have the maintenance on. Why should we have to pay for a parking permit?
Charles.
The city's approach on most things concerning the streets is that that's their street and they can do anything they want to with it. When it comes to how long you can park your own individual car on the street at any one time, they come down pretty hard. because the streets are theirs, the parkways are theirs. So that's why you have to pay for a parking permit.
Why are we penalized because we live closer to the RCC? Because I live catty corner to it. So
Well,
I'm penalized by that.
I agree with you. You should just have to prove that you live in the area where you say you do, and they should give you a parking permit.
Right.
Well, as I
Sounds
said,
like
if there are any volunteers, my contact information is in the chat. Anyone volunteers to start that back up?
I will.
You then call me after the meeting, and we'll start that ad hoc committee up again to address parking concerns in the neighborhood. Any other items for, I guess, future consideration or comments that you just have to speak now or to get off your chest, or you're not going to be able to sleep tonight? Teresa.
Yeah, good. Oh, let's turn my, good evening, everyone. I'm here on Beechwood in between Brockton and Magnolia, and I don't have legitimate facts, but I know for sure that our neighbor across the street is very obviously operating a very low-cost Airbnb from their garage, and it just brings in really sketchy characters. And I don't know if the Wood Streets has any kind of ordinance against Airbnb, or if anyone can speak to that. I'm just really curious. I don't really know what to do, but just I've heard it's less than $70 a night that they charge, and just really sketchy people that are always parking in front of our house. And my 2-year-old is running around the street, and it's just kind of concerning. So I don't know if anyone has any comments about that, or if we can, you know, maybe bring this up at a later date. So
Sure, less than $70 a night. That's lower than rent in the Wood Streets. You know, so some people might want to just move in permanently. Hey, Paloma, can you address that? Do you have any information on that? Paloma Montes is Erin Edwards, our city council person's legislative field representative.
Yeah, hey everyone, thank you for being here this evening. So what I can do, Teresa, is I can look into what exactly the city's position is on that, like what laws essentially we have in place, what ordinances we have in place to address that. Okay. So I'm gonna put my contact information in the chat, and Teresa, if you wouldn't mind exchanging info with me, then we'll definitely follow up with one another and stay in contact about it. So here goes my cell phone number, and this is for anyone that needs help with an inquiry in the future. Feel free to call, text me, whatever you need. But Teresa, hit me up.
Yep.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this. Thank you very much.
I see another comment in there on parking from Andrew Valenzuela. So it seems to be an issue I mean, it was an issue 2-3 years ago. It's probably been an issue the entire time. Maybe it is time to reconvene that ad hoc committee, maybe have them do a little bit of work offline, and then maybe for our November meeting, maybe that's what the topic is, parking again. So, but it is 8:20. We are 20 minutes over. Shame on the person running the meeting. And I want to thank you all for coming tonight. And hopefully we'll see you all at National Night Out August 3rd. We'll see you in person. So, all right, take care. Have a great night.